What's going on, YouTube? Bacon here, bringing you another video. This one going to be my week 10 match for the VPL. This is the last week of the regular season. The way it sits right now is it's winning in for our team, and if we lose, we can still make it in, but obviously never want to leave anything up to kind of the results of other games. So definitely looking to pick up a win here and finish the season out 7-3, make the playoffs. We're actually 7-3 last season. We managed to pick up a championship, so as long as I'm in playoffs, I'm confident that I can beat anyone that's there, even if I might not have as good of a matchup as I might like, but basically just got to get in first. I don't care about seeding, just got to get in. That's kind of been the mentality the entire season, is just make the playoffs, and then worry about it from there, matchup by matchup. So this week we've got Angelo, who's 0-9 for the season coming into this game, unfortunately. He's had some close games, lost a couple games due to hacks, probably 2 or 3 actually at this point, that he should have won, that he missed a Stone Edge or Hydro Pump or the like. So a little bit of unfortunate luck for Angelo. He is new to the league, so I think this is his first time doing Draft League actually. But all things considered, despite the record, I think he's done fairly well this season. And he's got a pretty decent matchup on me versus me on paper. Let me just run through his squad really quickly. Angelo's got Thunderous Therian Form, Entei, Gardevoir, Sharpedo, Virizion, Simisear, Mega Aggron, Toxapex, Crocodile, Ambipom, and Luxray. So just kind of looking at the matchup, a couple things. His only hazard removal is Defog Thunderous Therian, which I know from experience is not something you want to be running particularly frequently. I had Thunderous last season, so definitely not something you want to be running particularly frequently. It leaves him a little bit vulnerable to hazard stack, especially considering things like Entei and Simisear don't appreciate rocks. A lot of his team's grounded, so it doesn't appreciate spikes or T-spikes. Assuming, of course, he doesn't bring Toxapex to absorb the T-spikes. So, in general, hazard stack has been kind of a mode that's punished Angelo's team this season pretty significantly. Especially because a lot of rockers can trade with rocks with Mega Aggron pretty freely, because they're usually like ground types or the like. So that's just kind of overall what I was looking at on paper here going into the matchup. So let's get right into the team builder. I've got Claydol here with Rapid Spin, Trick Room, Earth Power, and Explosion. Max Spadef Claydol here to help me out with the Gardevoir a little bit with leftovers. So the options are I can Trick Room and come back in later to try and reset it, or I can just Trick Room Boom and then see what happens with Marowak. You see is also on the screen there. So Claydol is more of a support aspect this week. He can Rapid Spin on the Aggron if need be, if I'm bringing it in over the course of the match. Earth Power can chip that thing down, wear it down over the course of the game, which is nice for things like my Kyurem in the back. And Explosion's just there for getting big damage off on something like Gardevoir, or if he tries to bring in Thunderous on me after I've set Trick Room. I can get some big damage off with Explosion, and that should make it easier for some of my weaker mons in the back to sweep. So that was kind of the idea behind the Claydol set. Bringing back another physically defensive Miltank here. Whitney the Miltank, max HP, max Phys Def, leftovers, Thick Fat, Heal Bell, Milk Drink, Seismic Toss, and Stealth Rock. This is the main Entei check on the team. Entei really can't touch me unless he's running some kind of like special Calm Mind set or something like that. Heal Bell is nice to get rid of those kind of 50% burns that I'd probably be eating from Sacred Fire over the course of the match, or if I happen to get toxic by something on his team like or Toxapex or something like that carrying Toxic. Heal Bell's nice for that as well. Seismic Toss is just good for getting consistent chip off on his team, specifically things like the Mega Aggron, which is a tough Pokemon to wear down on the course of the match, but he doesn't have Wish support, so any damage that hits on that Mega Aggron is going to stay there, assuming he doesn't have Rest. That was kind of the idea behind the Miltank. Just get up Stealth Rock, chip down things like the Thunderous and the Entei over the course of the match, and set it up for some of my offense in the back here. Speaking of offense in the back, we've got Marowak here, Dry Bones, coming back for I think only its 3rd game of the season. I really haven't found too much success fitting Marowak onto some of my teams, but in this case I thought it had a really good matchup under Trick Room. So we're running Thick Club with Rockhead, Swords Dance, Shadow Bone, Earthquake, and Flare Blitz. Hits his team incredibly hard. Swords Dance I was caught between Sub and Swords Dance because I was thinking there could be a situation where under Trick Room, like Sharpedo has to come in and protect stall a Trick Room turn where I could sub up and get an additional kill. But I ultimately ended up going with Swords Dance just to help me break through something like Toxapex if he happened to bring that. I could Swords Dance on a predicted switch out into Toxapex and then knock it out with Earthquake, or even potentially Shadow Bone if I've got hazards up. So that was kind of the idea behind the Marowak there. Basically, Trick Room up with Claydol. If I do get the boom off, I've got 3 turns of Trick Room for Marowak to deal with. It can basically just click buttons versus team. Even resisted hits like Flare Blitz on an Entei or on a Sharpedo are going to do massive damage. So basically getting any kind of damage on his team is nice with Marowak. Hopefully can pick up 1 or 2 kills over the course of the match. Next up, we got Frogchamp the Greninja. Come back once again, 10 out of 10 games for Greninja. Focus Sash with Torrent, Spikes, Ice Beam, Scald, and Dark Pulse. Coverage is just really nice for his team. I don't have to worry about if he's like Scarf, Thunderous, or anything like that. I can spike up immediately. If he is Scarf Thunderous, I can get out of there into an appropriate response. If he scarfs himself into like an electric move, I can go out into my Claydol, or he could just potentially Volt Switch or U-turn out, which would put me in Torrent range actually to get my Scalds to do a lot more damage later in the game against something like a Mega Aggron. If I predict him going for Stealth Rocks, I can bring a 1 HP Greninja in on the Stealth Rock turn and then fire off a Scald and do some big damage to his team. But Spikes overall, it's just really nice to hit everything grounded. Again, chipping down the Mega Aggron, chipping down the Gardevoir, Entei, all that kind of grounded stuff. Crocodile that doesn't appreciate the Spike there. Next up, we got Tapu Koko. Once again, running Tapunium Z on Tapu Koko. It's something that's found itself a lot. Situation it's found itself a lot in on my team is its job isn't primarily to kill things. It's more to chip them down so that the rest of my team can handle them. Things like Greninja that doesn't otherwise have the best offensive stats. Really appreciate things being worn down by Tapu Koko using the Tapunium Z to get off 75% HP on something. The main purpose of this is for the Aggron, but it also kind of doubles for the Thunderous. If he goes into Thunderous expecting an electric move and I Z Nature's Madness him, he'll knock him down to 75%, knock him down to 25%, and put him in range of a Dazzling Gleam. So I've got Dazzling Gleam, Thunderbolt, and Volt Switch. I really didn't care too much about the existence of things like Crocodile and Thunderous when using Volt Switch over U-turn here, because if he goes into Crocodile, obviously I have Dazzling Gleam to threaten that, or I could Z or Nature's Madness the Thunderous on a predicted switch, and if rocks are up, it's not really the best idea for him to be bringing in Thundy on me directly anyways, and I've got a pretty decent response for that in my Claydol. Last up here, we got Choice Scarf, Kyurem Black, Ice Beam, Fusion Bolt, Earth Power, and Outrage. If I can clean out the Gardevoir and the Aggron, I've got a really good chance to sweep with Outrage, especially if it's not Intimidate Crocodile. After rocks slash Spike, everything on his team should drop to an Outrage besides the Gardevoir and the Aggron. So Scarf Kyurem Black, it's a really nice speed tier for this matchup. I should be able to outrun Entei, Thunderous, Crocodile, barring of course the Thunderous is not Choice Scarf itself, and even potentially speed tie with a +1 Sharpedo if it knocks something out without protecting first. And I should outspeed a potential Scarf Gardevoir, which I was somewhat expecting this match as well. So, getting into the matchup here, you can see he brought the Entei, Sharpedo, Thunderous, Crocodile, Aggron, and the Gardevoir. No Toxapex, which is nice. That makes Kyurem Black's job a little bit easier. Like I mentioned, those 4 on the left after Spikes and Rocks damage should drop to an Outrage, so just gotta weaken the Aggron. If I hit that thing with a 75% right off the bat with Tapu Koko, that's good for me, and then get rid of the Gardevoir, and I can potentially sweep with Outrage. If just the Aggron's gone, I could potentially sweep with like Ice Beam, if that Gardevoir is chipped down a little bit and the Sharpedo's weakened, because Sharpedo's defenses are pretty meager at best. So I feel like Kyurem Black's got a pretty good chance to sweep in the back. Spikes are looking really nice versus him as well, because like I mentioned, only defog support is the Thunderous. So let's just get right into it here. Looking at lead matchup, I had a couple options here. Originally I was planning to lead Greninja or Tapu Koko, and kind of just looking at the team he brought, I think Greninja's fine. I can just get up a Spike immediately if he leads like Mega Aggron. He actually switches out into the Gardevoir the first turn from the Thunderous, probably fearing an Ice Beam. So I get a Spike up, which is going to be really nice for me over the course of the match, as he just goes out into his Gardevoir and clicks Moonblast on the Claydol coming in. So that's good for me. Claydol is in. I can set Trick Room against this Gardevoir and not really care what it goes for. Obviously, you got the Moonblast Spadef drop, special attack drop, which is a little unfortunate because now I don't really want to click Earth Power versus anything. But he just goes for Moonblast again as I stay in here to click the Trick Room. I think my best option here, now that I've got the Spike up, is just to Explode. Like, Claydol's kind of weak anyways. It's not going to be able to check the Thunderous regardless at this point. And if he decides to go like hard into it or something, predicting a ground move, I want boom. But he actually makes a really ballsy play and goes hard aggron, even though it hadn't mega'd yet, on the explosion, and takes 7%. So a little unfortunate that explosion wasn't able to get like big chip damage off on the Gardevoir or anything off on the Thunderous. But at least I can now get into my Marowak here. He doesn't have to mega with his Aggron, but then he's playing a game with like Earthquake, so I'm just going to click Flare Blitz here. He does end up going Entei, which of course resists the Flare Blitz and won't die to 1, but even big damage off on that thing is good for my Kyurem in the back, potentially sweeping with Ice Beam like I mentioned, and he is going to drop to 2 Flare Blitzes, so I've got no reason not to click it again here as he does go down. So I've still got 1 turn of Trick Room left, and this is where Sub would have been really nice, because now he can freely go out into his Sharpedo, protect up, and waste my last Trick Room turn, and I can't do anything about it. Really unfortunate that I didn't end up running Sub, because Marowak would have picked up a second kill here early in the match, but what are you going to do? I got a little too scared of the Toxapex last minute and switched it to Swords Dance, so a little unfortunate there, but I can go hard Miltank on the predicted Protect. I should be able to wall this if it's a physically offensive variant of Sharpedo, and Life Orb Sharpedo is going to be wearing himself down either way, which is fine with me for, once again, a potential Ice Beam sweep. But he does show Super Fang on his Sharpedo, so that's definitely some nice tech there with the Sharpedo. I'm just going to chip him down a little bit with Seismic Toss. He is in range of another one, but I think rocks are a little bit more valuable for me at this point in the match. I could Milk Drink stall him out of Life Orb hits, but if he has Crunch and Liquidation, which he does show the Liquidation here, he could potentially get defense drops on me anyways, and then I end up without rocks up, and I don't want that to happen if I try to Milk Drink stall him. So I'm just going to go right for Stealth Rocks here as he goes for the Liquidation. He will 2-hit KO me like I mentioned, but now he's in range of pretty much anything from any Pokemon on my team. Obviously he's going to outspeed them all at this point, but I can basically do a couple things to come in on this Sharpedo now that he's knocked out my Miltank. I got my hazards up. I don't think the Thunderous is going to be running Defog versus me, because he needs the coverage too badly. Things like Dark Pulse are really important to be running on his Thundy this week, so I'm really not thinking, and probably a Poison move as well for my Koko, so I don't think he's going to have Defog on the Thunderous. I can just go out into Koko here. I'm going to have to eat a big Super Fang from the Sharpedo, but I can just knock it out with Volt Switch pretty freely here. Oh, actually I opt for the Dazzling Gleam in case you want to go Thunderous here. So that's fine by me. I get the Sharpedo gone, the Entei's gone, so his big offensive threats, I think, are really just neutralized at this point in the match. Thunderous is still a little bit of a threat depending on his set, like a Nasty Plot, Dual Dance type Thunderous set could be potentially problematic. But here I'm just going to go for the Thunderbolt to 2-hit KO this Aggron. It looks like he's actually not very Spadef invested, so I don't know what the bulk or roll was on that Thunderbolt, but he is going to be able to get up Stealth Rocks, which is a little unfortunate for me. Obviously, that's going to be chipping down my Kyurem Black and my Marrow in the back, but the fact that he's giving me his Aggron is, again, making it look really nice for a potential Kyurem Black sweep here at the end. So, potential Ice Beam sweep, or if I can get rid of this Gardevoir, a potential Outrage sweep. So he goes out into Gardevoir here. I'm going to scout out to figure out if he is a Choice Scarf Gardevoir. I think he is, just based on the way he's been playing it. And he does turn out to be Choice Scarf. Knock out my Tapu Koko. I really didn't have anything I wanted to switch in on that anyways. And it was too risky to go Greninja trying to predict a Psychic move. He really had no reason not to click Moonblast there. But since I know he's Choice Scarf, that means Marowak's going to be able to come out here and claim another one. If he gives me Gardevoir, that's going to be a Kyurem Black sweep, which he does give me Gardevoir. So that's going to be a Kyurem Black sweep, guaranteed at this point. I can go for Ice Beam or I can go for Outrage. There's a couple options. I guess it's not a guaranteed sweep for the Kyurem, but Kyurem's looking real good right now. And I'm just going to be able to sack off Marowak here to whatever he goes out into. I've got no reason to let him try and set up a Nasty Plot or a Substitute or anything weird like that as he goes out into Thunderous here. So I'm just going to click Flare Blitz, and this thing's going to die if it tries to set up on me. And he does go for the Thunderbolt. So even if this is Choice Scarf, Thunderous in the back here, Kyurem Black should still be able to eat a hit, and Crocodile's going to get 2-hit KO'd by Outrage. The reason I go for Outrage here is I don't want to risk him being like a Randy Yachi Berry, which could make some sense versus me, given I've got the Abomasnow and the Kyurem Black. So I'm just going to go for Outrage here. I know I won't guaranteed Oko the Crocodile, especially if he's Intimidate, but I can get damage off on that thing and then kill him with Greninja. I'm out of range of a Choice Scarf Earthquake on my Greninja anyways, so Outrage plus Scald will KO him. So I just clicked Outrage. It turns out he's not Intimidate, so he's going to drop to the Outrage. Probably a Choice Band Moxie set or something like that. Actually, no, I think he ended up saying it was Citrus Berry after the game. Citrus Berry Moxie on the Crocodile. So just able to click Outrage there with Kieran Black at the end. Kind of set it up for the game plan. Like, not a pretty win, it's only a 2-0, but that game basically I think went according to plan. There were a couple things that could have gone better for me. Obviously exploding on the Aggron was a little unfortunate. I wasn't able to get big damage off on something like the Gardevoir or the Thundurus early game, which would have been nice for me, but otherwise, I think the game pretty much went according to plan. If I had substitute on Marowak like I had originally intended, that would have gone a little bit better for me there. And then also with the Miltank, I could have potentially, like I mentioned, Milk Drink stalled that Sharpedo to death as it killed itself with Life Orb recoil, but I really didn't feel like it was worth risking crits and defense drops just to not get up rocks at that point in the game. I felt like rocks were really important to put things like Thundurus guaranteed and range of outrage. Things like that I felt were more worth it to me than keeping my Miltank around. But yeah, that's going to be a 2-0 victory for us. Good game to Angelo. I thought he played pretty well. Really nothing that I would point out so much. It's more of a deficiency of the team that it's weak to hazard stacks, so Spikes and Stealth Rocks really chipped down his team there over the course of the match. And hopefully Angelo comes back again next year. We are trying to work on a D-League that I think he'd fit in really well, because he's clearly got some interest in the game and he knows how to play. It's just a matter of getting him into the draft mindset of what kinds of Pokemon you need to have on your team, what kinds of support roles you need, and then how to kind of put that together in the team builder to have an effective game plan for your opponent on any given week. Like I mentioned, Angelo probably should have had 2 or 3 wins this season, bar hacks. So to finish 0-10 is obviously unfortunate for him, but don't let it get you down. I think you had still a pretty good season for your first time in the league. And I hope to see you again next year. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you tune in for playoffs. We're going up against Dick in the quarterfinals matchup. A nice rematch from the first week of the season where I got absolutely stomped. So hopefully I can come back and at least give him a closer game, if not pick up the W there. I'm going to have to really change up some prep this time around and hopefully come out with a W and keep making that push towards a repeat championship here in the VPL. Thank you guys very much for watching to this point if you did, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.